We used to get when I was oops, that's Hi everyone, welcome to Language Speaks. I'm Neha. Today I am here to share some of my tips to learn German in the most effective way. These are a few tips which I followed when I was learning the language. So for those of you who are really very keen to learn German, I am sure these tips will be really handy for you. Let's begin. Tip number 1. Imitation. Imitation is basically the key to learn any language. Do you know, as children, how we learn the language? We practically imitated, that is, copied every word that our parents spoke, didn't we? Irrespective of the fact that whether we understood what's being said or not. That's how you learn the new language. So after you watch my videos, try imitating or try copying what I've said. So what does copying do? What that will do is that will retain that word in your memory. When I was learning the language, whenever I used to learn a new word or a new sentence, I used to come home and I used to keep repeating, keep copying what I've learned, what I've heard, be it the new word, be it the new sentence. And my mom used to get slightly irritated because I used to keep just talking in German, keep repeating the word. So that way, like I said, it did retain a lot of the vocab that I learned. Tip number 2. Repeat after me. Very simple. When I tell you a new word or a sentence, pause the video and repeat after me. This will help that word to register in your brain then and there. Tip number 3. Making your own notes. When you're watching the video, you know that the German word or the sentence pops somewhere on the screen here. So what you do is make a dedicated notebook to learn German. Make your own notes. Making your own notes or writing in your own handwriting fixes that word or a sentence more effectively in your brain. Also, you can write the pronunciation of those words or sentences in your native or regional language. So you don't need to really memorize the pronunciations. You can just refer to the notes that you've made and the pronunciation that you've written in your own language. And that's how you'll pronounce it. Tip number 4. Practice reading. When I was learning the language, we used to read a lot of German magazines because we didn't have that much exposure to the web then. With so much of exposure online, make sure you read little articles on the German websites. So there are different websites. You can just go online and Google websites for some newspapers, or even if you type German magazines, it'll give you links to those and you can read them aloud so you know what exactly you are reading, and you can also concentrate on the pronunciations. Tip number 5. Implementation of the new words that you've learned. So if you have learned a new word watching my video, make sure to implement it in a sentence or just use the word. That will again engrave that word continuously. It will reinforce that memory for you to learn that word. Also, going back to the 4th point where I mentioned about reading practice. So if you come across any new word while you're reading, make an effort, try looking up that word online or in a dictionary So this is another technique which will help you memorize the word. Tip number 6. Visual memory. Visual memory is one of the most effective ways to learn the language. So if you have a new word and say you create a visual memory of it. For example, if I say the word an apple, so what is the visual memory that you get? A fruit which is red in color. So you know what an apple looks like, right? As soon as I mention apple, you know what it looks like. So similarly, once you know what the German word means, for example, if I say das Buch, so das Buch is the book. So maybe you can draw a small picture besides it, or if you can just stick a photo of the book next to it. That's how you create a visual memory. Tip number 7. Find a language buddy. So find someone who shares the same interest of learning German with you. This way you can share a lot of German with them. You can talk to them, you can exchange what you've learned. And also, while I was learning the language and we used to travel to and fro to the classes, and so we were a group of friends who used to travel together. And while on our journey back home in the train, we used to play this little game where to increase our vocabulary or to reaffirm the newly learned German vocab. It was like we used to take a word and we used to say what that word means in the 4 different languages. So for instance, if I take the word the book in English, so for example, I say the book. So someone else would say, what's it called in German? Das Buch. What's it called in Marathi? Pustak. What is it called in Hindi? Kitab. So this was like an exercise to, challenge your memory and to reaffirm the vocabulary that you've learned in German. Tip number 8. As another exercise, what you can do is you can translate some small sentences in German from your native or regional language. So just like any daily routine sentences, say, I want to have a coffee, I am going out, I am reading a book. So once you've learned some of the vocab, you can put them in a sentence and use it to your day-to-day basis. So when you start translating these little day-to-day sentences in German, what that will do is it will help you become more and more fluent, and it will give you the confidence while talking the language. Tip number 9. Focus on the grammar. German grammar is different to English grammar. So German has a set of rules which are to be followed while learning the language. So a heads up to you all keen learners, to follow and watch my German videos, which I will be doing gradually throughout as I progress through the videos. And last but not the least, tip number 10. Do not fuss a lot about the tone. Concentrate more on the pronunciation. So once you get the pronunciation right, the tone will fall in place. So every language has its own peculiar tone when you talk any sentence. So for example, if I have to say, how are you? So in English, when I ask that, it would go like, how are you? In German, that would be, wie geht es dir? If I have to say that in Marathi, it will be, kashi es? In Hindi, I'd say it as, kaisi hai aap? So you see, there were different tones in all the 4 languages that I spoke. But I did concentrate on the pronunciation that was different for different languages. So the key here is concentrate on the pronunciations and not the tone, because that will eventually fall together. So these were some of my tips to learn the language in its most effective way. I hope these tips are useful to you and you are able to implement some of these. If you have liked this episode, please give it a thumbs up, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. I'll see you next time. Auf Wiedersehen. Bye.